All right, we are live. Thank you for joining us on the lounge today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today I've got Dr. Peggy DeLong, and we are going to teach you how to change your life with the power of gratitude in just 5 minutes per day. Now, don't roll your eyes at me because that used to be something I would have done, as well as Dr. Peggy here in the past. We have much in our life to be grateful for, but very often we focus on the negative. In today's episode, we are going to show you how gratitude can transform your life, help you move through grief, as well as improve your mental health. And this is something that not only aviation and aerospace professionals need, but all of us can benefit from in developing this superpower. Dr. Peggy, thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. It's a pleasure.
Now, Dr. Peggy, I know that you did not always believe in the power of gratitude. And in fact, you were probably just like me, rolling your eyes very heavily at this word. Can you tell us a little bit more about that pivot and what brought you to the point that you are today where you speak about this on stage and off?
Sure. I truly was an ungrateful teen and an ungrateful young adult. I really didn't even know what gratitude was until I experienced tragedy in my life. And I was 26 years old. Things were going really well. I was engaged to a wonderful man. We were planning our wedding. I was interviewing for a doctoral program, my lifelong dream to be a psychologist. And all at once, things came crashing down. It would appear
Mm.
to be literally overnight. My fiance developed a lump on the side of his neck.
Wow.
And I just knew that it was bad. I had a pit in my stomach and a premonition that I would be living my life without him. Unfortunately, it was a very aggressive form of cancer, and he only survived 7 months after diagnosis. And it was a point when the doctors told us that there was nothing left that they could do for him and that he was going to die. And he stayed in the hospital during that time. He didn't come home for hospice. So in the hospital, I sat by his side for 42 days and nights. And every day was so unpredictable. I didn't know if he'd be able to open his eyes and look at me that day. I didn't know if he'd
Mm.
be able to speak my name that day. I didn't know if he was going to die that day. Everything was so incredibly and nauseatingly unpredictable. But the one thing that was predictable was that when all the guests had to leave at 8 p.m. and I was allowed to stay, I could get myself a cup of hazelnut coffee. And in that hazelnut coffee, I discovered the power of gratitude. My 26-year-old self had no idea what I was doing. I just knew it made me feel good. And I looked forward to that cup every night. And I
Mm.
would sit by his side and sip and journal. And it just brought me so much comfort. The aroma permeated his hospital room and made it seem less sterile. The warmth of the cup comforted me, wrapping my hands around that styrofoam. And
Yeah.
it reminded me of being home because I started drinking hazelnut coffee my senior year in high school with my mother. It was how I started my day. So there were so many wonderful things connected to that cup, but really it was the predictability that I was grateful for. But I didn't even know that what I was doing was practicing gratitude. So unfortunately, he passed away. I went back home to live with my parents, and 6 weeks later, my father had a sudden heart attack and died.
Mm.
So my mother and I found ourselves two young widows. I was 26 and she was 52. And
Wow.
once again, it was gratitude that helped me move through. So I was devastated. I felt like my childhood died when my father died, and my future died when my fiance died. And it was an incredibly lonely place. And gratitude every day for what I did have in my life is what got me through. For my friends, the love that was bestowed upon my fiance, and all of the beautiful things that I got to witness through his treatment and after his death. So that was how I discovered gratitude on my worst days. So it is my mission to help other people find ways to incorporate gratitude into life every day in the very simplest of ways, and to not wait for your good days to find something to be grateful for. Gratitude truly is most powerful on our difficult days.
I love that. And I think most people tend to focus on the negative things. I mean, we're hardwired for that. And it's a, protective mechanism so that we can make sure we don't go into dangerous situations, et cetera. And yesterday I was sharing with you before we went live, I did this vision practice and this outlining of the last 10 weeks, what were my highs and my lows. And even though I also have a gratitude practice, it was a bit delightful and surprising to go, whoa, my highs are 3 times the length of these lows, but yet those lows have taken up this much energy and mental space for the last 10 weeks because I was focusing on them. And doing something like that really just helped to shift my attention. And so this is something that you were learning to do in those really hard moments. Now, of course, when you're in that, how do people get started? I mean, you mentioned it's just that simple thing of the cup of coffee, the smell, but for someone who's really just they can't get out of it, what's the first thing you tell them that you invite them to try?
Often it's the simplest things that we overlook that we can start a gratitude practice with. So what you might take for granted, simple pleasures, and to really to look what you've got going on in your own life that you may have appreciated in the past, it's still there. And to just think about the simplest of things, not to look for big things,
Right.
because our brain really can't tell the difference whether we're grateful for something small or grateful for something huge. And when we intentionally keep it simple, then our brain starts to appreciate, notice, and highlight the simple things, which truly are there every day. And
Yeah.
then over the course of time, we truly do form new neural pathways in our brain to become a more positive thinker and to shift the way we perceive our own lives and the world. The lens changes. The world doesn't change, but the way that we see the world changes, so that we begin to appreciate and notice the small things. And there are more opportunities for feeling good, for elevating mood. And this is particularly helpful during grief, during your
Mm.
very difficult days, to keep it simple.
I love that. And if we learn how to shift that perspective and pivot into that way of looking at the world when we're feeling strong, that helps us to build it as a neural pathway, as you mentioned, so that it's our default, or it can be our default, even when something really intense occurs. And so, you know, the simplicity is something that most of us, I think, have lost sight of because our world is so complex. And so I often, what I try to do is think about when I was a child, what brought me joy and bring that in a little bit. Just the other day, I went to Wonder Spaces Austin. I think there's a few Wonder Spaces around the world. It's experiential art. And I felt like a kid in there. It was wonderful. And it's not a feeling we often invite in. But when we can put our attention there, that's where the energy is going to go, right? And we'll start to notice more and more of it, which, as we spoke about, is your RAS. Can you tell us a little bit more about the RAS?
Sure. The reticular activating system, or otherwise known as the RAS, which is part of our brain that works as a filtering system. The great part is we get to tell it what's important to us. So when we are intentionally making a gratitude practice, it's like we're telling our brains to notice all of the good things. And then our
Mm.
behind the scenes, our brain does the work for us by highlighting what we want to pay attention to. And then over the course of time, you may notice more and more things to be grateful for. And the things that previously annoyed you, you might not even notice anymore. So that's the reticular activating system doing its job. And one idea that many people can relate to is if you're in the market for a new car. So with my husband, his old pickup truck died, and he needed to purchase a new car quickly. So all of a sudden, he decided he wanted to buy a Jeep Wrangler, a white Jeep Wrangler. So we didn't really notice all the Jeep Wranglers on the road before, but as soon as he decided on a white Jeep Wrangler, all of a sudden they're all over the place.
They're everywhere.
Now, the world did not increase in white Jeep Wranglers. We just
Right.
told our brains, this is important to us, pay attention. And that's the way the RAS works. But you get to tell it what's important to you. And that's the beautiful part of how it works. So you can harness that power by telling yourself something so simple as, I'm going to be more aware of my blessings today.
I love that. Yeah, and that's very true. I mean, it's the same, I've often heard from women once they become pregnant, all of a sudden they notice pregnant women everywhere. And it's like, well, they were always there. Just now all of a sudden you're paying attention.
Yep.
And so when we intentionally program, if you will, the intentions that we do desire, then we can invite more of them into our sphere of awareness.
Yes, yes. And that's, a wonderful way that gratitude works in our favor when we start with an intentional practice.
I love that. And so I know that you've got some books out there. You speak. You have a course, which is called the Law of Attraction in Action. Because I think the missing piece for a lot of people has been this, positive thinking. I'm going to visualize, but then they don't do anything, right? As much as I visualize, packages appearing from Amazon, if I haven't actually clicked the button, they don't appear. It doesn't work that way, right? So,
Exactly.
can you tell us a little bit more? You even do bracelets. So how does all of this tie in together with the gratitude practices that you teach people?
Sure. It's all related to positive psychology and really just simple brain-based activities. It's often so simple that we overlook their power, the
Mm,
power of joy, the power of nature, things that are accessible to us. And what I love about gratitude is that it's free and it's
mhm.
accessible at any minute of the day. You don't need any equipment, you don't need another person, just your brain. And I like teaching people simple actions to take. So it's not just an idea, you're not just motivated or inspired, you're
Right.
given simple exercises to do. So that is what my law of attraction, that's why I added in action to give
Yeah.
simple ideas. So if you're doing a visualization practice, what exactly are you going to do? And for me, I love to share that putting into action a visualization practice is how I met my husband. So after my fiance died, when I was ready to start dating again, I got really clear about my future partner and what I wanted in my life. I had it before, the love of my life, and he passed away. So I knew it was possible to have that kind of love again, and I was not going to settle for anything less. So I got really clear on what I wanted, and I remember sitting in my childhood bedroom and really thinking about it. I made a list of what I would love, that he, needed to ski, love children, and he's all of those things. He's an Air Force veteran, and so he's very motivated. He loves children. He's a teacher. He loves to ski. He's been the head coach of our kids' ski team. So he all of everything that I wanted in a partner, he was and more. But I put it into action and I let people know that I was ready to start dating and the kind of person that I wanted. So, also speaking your goals out loud is really helpful in sharing with people. So, if you are doing a gratitude practice, even doing it with a partner, I have an activity called Team Gratitude, where you pick a partner and every day you share what you're grateful for. It helps keep you accountable and it automatically infuses human connection into your day. And human connection is the number one factor that helps that predicts happiness and longevity in our lives. So that's one of my favorite gratitude practices is team gratitude and picking a partner and just sharing in a way that feels comfortable with you, with your partner every day, what you're grateful for.
I love that. Yes, because sometimes we, fall off the wagon even with the best of intentions. So by having an accountability buddy, now this could be for your gratitude practice, for your sport, for, schoolwork that you're doing, something, hey, I'm going to learn a language. Great. Check in with somebody all the time so that you have that sense of accountability and you take more responsibility with it because again, you're declaring its importance to you. And I think a lot of us, we know what we don't want, but we're not always great at articulating what we do want. And some of that is because we haven't given ourselves permission to explore those things. Maybe society or the cultural programming has told us that we shouldn't want them or that it's shameful because it's against the norm. And so a lot of this is that acceptance of self, right? And building that awareness so that you can articulate like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is who I am. This is what I do want, not just this is what I don't want. Because otherwise, this is not like a box ticking exercise, guys. Don't walk away thinking like, okay, I'm gonna go tell my friends like these are the qualities in a partner that I want, and then here's what I don't want. And then if they don't meet all these things, it's a no. No, it's just about being very clear in the things that you're going after so that other people know when to make those connections. And then it sparks that intuitive hit of, hey, this would be a great friend for this person, or this would be a great business partner. Let me make that connection.
Exactly, and that's exactly what happened. Friends conspired and made sure we got to know each other.
Yeah, beautiful. All right. So now with grief, obviously you've already shared with us how the simple practices help us move through it. Now, grief is not linear. We know that it's layers and it's going to be different for everybody. And we need to actually feel those things. Can you talk to us a little bit more about grief and also its expression? Because, of course, the loss of a loved one, a lot of grief, but the loss of identity, loss of job, even the loss of a dream, the change of a dream can all bring in grief. So, how does one approach it? And how can we apply gratitude to help us move through it?
Sure. Well, I always like to say that it's first important to allow yourself to feel the grief. It is crucial, and not just to immediately go to methods of positive psychology. We cannot heal what we don't feel. So,
Mm,
allowing yourself to feel that intense sadness and process it either by talking with a good friend, writing about it, visiting memories, that's crucial. And then gratitude is one way to trust that you're not going to get stuck in that gut wrenching grief. It's helpful to trust that you have a method to help yourself move forward. And in my experience, gratitude has been one of the easiest, most pleasant ways to do so, by thinking about memories that I'm grateful for and taking on a characteristic of that person that I'm grateful for and then being that in the world. So with
mm.
my father was a very goofy person. And one of the things that I do is carry on his goofiness with my
Yeah,
family. So and his childlike qualities. So that is one way, being grateful for a value about something, an experience, but never at the cost of ignoring your emotional pain. That comes first. And then when you use gratitude as a method to move forward, then you trust in the future that you're not going to get stuck there in the sadness. And then it allows you the next time when grief comes over you to resist that temptation to ignore it, because unfortunately there is no way around grief, only through. And we can carry it with us forever, and some days it's lighter and some days it's heavier, but it never completely goes away. And
yeah.
it's just being able to learn to learn to carry the grief. But that's the way that it's been very helpful for me and my clients to think of it that way.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And, a lot of times in today's world, we have the everything is awesome, toxic positivity kind of mindset. So I'm really glad that you said we cannot heal what we do not feel. And, a lot of people in STEM fields, in aviation and aerospace, we like to live up here. We like to intellectualize everything. So sometimes we might even spout these platitudes to each other, but we're not feeling. And I admit I was there, and when I went through divorce in 2019, a year after getting married, I thought that it was like never going to end. And today is actually the end, what would have been my 5th wedding anniversary. So I'm really grateful we get to do this type of conversation for the podcast today. And this necklace, I took my ring and I transformed it into something that I could still wear and honor the memories that I did have with my ex partner and the gratitude I had for the things I did learn and that I did love about that relationship, because ultimately that made me who I am today. But it did take me a couple of years to get there. And it wasn't until I really allowed myself to feel instead of numbing by turning to other things and ignoring it, as much as we want to stuff things down into our pinky toe, we cannot.
Right.
It's going to erupt at some point. And so that was something that really also helped me as well.
Right. And not only will it erupt at some point, but then when we don't allow ourselves to feel emotional pain, we also shut ourselves off to joy.
Yes.
It's kind of like general anesthesia. You don't get to pick and choose what body parts go numb when you have general
Mm,
anesthesia for surgery. Everything
right.
goes numb.
Yeah.
And when you numb yourself to pain, emotional pain, you're also unwittingly numbing yourself to experiencing the fullness of joy. So that's
Mm,
another reason, and to trust that it will happen, because when you're in the midst of it and just feels awful, it can be really scary to allow yourself to feel the grief.
right.
And another thing that also helped me was to look for the underlying value when you're experiencing a painful emotion, whether it's grief, betrayal, disappointment. the reason you're feeling that is because it's related to a value that you have. So, for
Mm.
example, you experience grief because of the value of love. And that is, what is one way that you can be love that day? What is something you can put into action? If you're feeling betrayed, it's because you value trust. So, one is one way that you can be trust in that day. That's another way to use your uncomfortable, painful feelings as a way to move forward.
That's beautiful. And it's about the being. I like that you mentioned that too, because so many times we only think about the outcome, right? I don't want to feel this and I want that outcome. And yet it's through the being, through that action that comes of being and that energy that we can then actually obtain the outcome. Without that processing, it's akin to being in a hard workout, I would say. For anyone who's ever competed in sport or, done a really hard workout, if you resist the pain or the fact that you can't breathe, then it sucks and you want to give up. But if you accept that that is what it takes in order to shave off 5 seconds or get across the finish line, you learn how to breathe better. You learn how to manage the mental as much as the physical experience you're going through. And that's what helps move you through. It's the acceptance of the situation rather than fighting against it. So it's really the same with our emotional body, just like our physical body.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. So you've already mentioned a few of the practices. Can you highlight what the practices you mentioned for 5 minutes a day, what we can do as part of a daily practice to help build up our RAS to put attention on gratitude?
Sure. The first exercise is something to do right when you wake up in the morning, and that is simply to say the words thank you out loud. You don't even need to be thinking about what you're grateful for, because you might be a little bit groggy, you're not thinking straight. So it's just to say the words "thank you," and the reason this is powerful is through the power of language. All
Mm,
of our lives, those two words are associated with positivity. We thank people for nice things. So it's priming your brain for positivity.
okay.
And often it's more of shutting down something else negative that often happens when people are going through a difficult time, whether it's grief or anything that you're struggling with, a crisis in your life. It can hit you first thing when you wake up in the morning.
Right.
And even before you get out of bed, your brain can be spiraling and having negative thoughts. So saying thank you is one way to stop that negative spiral. So two things are happening at once. You're getting a dose of serotonin and dopamine by saying thank you and thinking something positive, but you're simultaneously stopping that negative spiral before your feet even hit the floor. And that
Mm,
changes the trajectory of your day. It can
absolutely.
sometimes just a tiny shift, but it's just enough to have a better day. And that takes maybe 2 seconds. So exercise number one, 2 seconds.
Absolutely.
Exercise number two is what we spoke about before, is setting your intention to be more grateful and to be more aware of your blessings as you go about your day. You could do this while you're in the shower, while you're brushing your teeth. In fact, if you're doing it while you're brushing your teeth and using your non-dominant hand, it becomes even more powerful. So it's something saying just to yourself, I'm going to be more aware of my blessings as I go about my day today. And this activates the reticular activating system. So it works in your favor to filter out what you don't want to pay attention to and to let in what you are grateful for, and to notice more. And over the course of time, it develops that new neural pathway to be a more positive thinker. So this doesn't take any more time at all because you're attaching it to an already existing behavior before you step out of your bedroom. So
Habit
I
stack.
I like to use my bed door frame of my bedroom as a check, as my reminder. Have I set my intention yet today? And so that takes zero, no extra time.
Right.
Exercise number three is to express appreciation for one person every day. This could be in any form that feels comfortable for you. And it could be someone in your life today or someone from 10 years ago. And the reason this is so powerful is because the number one predictor of happiness is our human relationships. So
Yeah.
when you are expressing gratitude, you're fostering a closeness, you're connecting with another human being. And the research shows that the person who feels better is you. It's nice to hear what that people are grateful for you, but the person expressing the gratitude receives even more of a boost in mood. So it's one way that you can control your elevate your own mood by expressing gratitude. And you could get really creative with this. You could send a text, you could send a video message to somebody, or even an old-fashioned handwritten gratitude letter.
Yes.
And it's really powerful. It seems like such a simple exercise, but I love that there's research behind this. One study looked at 300 college students and that were at the college counseling center, and they were diagnosed with depression, and they
Mm,
put them into three different groups. One group received counseling only. Another group received counseling and wrote a gratitude letter for 3 weeks, and another group received counseling and just wrote about their day. And then they measured their self reported happiness at the 4 week mark. And as you would expect, the group that wrote the gratitude letters had the biggest boost in mood at the 4 week mark, only after writing 3 gratitude letters. So incredibly powerful. But
yeah.
then what was really amazing with this research was that they measured them again at the 12-week mark
Yeah.
after they didn't even write another gratitude letter. They maintained that boost in mood.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly powerful to write gratitude letters. And how nice is it to get a handwritten letter in the mail? We just
Oh my
don't
goodness. I
just
just got one as a response to a gratitude letter I sent in from a space kind exercise, and I sent it to my high school teacher that inspired me to start writing poetry. And I shared with her how she had, affected my life with poetry and that I published my first poem. And then she wrote me a thank you back. And like, I still think about it and just get this like full body buzz. And the best part is this is her last year of teaching. And I found her on the school's website and sent it over the summer. And so if I would have waited just one more year, I wouldn't have been able to express that in the same way. And so, it was delightful. So I highly encourage this particular practice too.
Yes, and you never know where it will lead you. And when I did this, it was to my third grade teacher. And we connected on Facebook, and I was able to get her current address and wrote her a thank you note. And now we get together about once a year for lunch. And I never
Amazing.
imagined that I would be seeing my favorite third grade teacher again in my life in my 50s.
Yeah,
So
wow, that's incredible.
you never know where it will bring you. So it's it feels great in the moment, and you're having a positive impact on somebody else's life. Sometimes that could be the one positive thing that makes somebody's day, is to receive that text or note. Another idea is to start your day that way.
Mm,
One study found that when people open up their email at the beginning of the day, open up that computer or phone or whatever you're looking at, and open up your email, about 80% of people hold their breath.
oh yeah.
And that is not great for our stress
No.
levels or our bodies. So, one way to counteract that is to intentionally send off one email of appreciation before you start going through your work email.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And automatically it shifts how you feel before you start your day. So that's
Beautiful.
exercise 3. That could take 30 seconds on a really busy day, or you could take as long as you like. But on the busiest of days, just 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And then exercise number 4 is using your emotional pain as a trigger to practice gratitude. So, what I mean by that is what we talked about before, the importance of feeling our emotional pain. But we don't want to get stuck there. So, you can
Right.
use gratitude as a method to move forward, either looking for the silver lining or the lesson, or when that's too hard, looking for the underlying positive value. And that is one way to trust that you're not going to get stuck in that emotional pain.
Mm,
So that the next time you're feeling some type of uncomfortable or painful emotion, you allow yourself to feel it, because from the last time you knew you didn't get stuck and you were able to move forward.
right.
And because that often is the biggest fear of feeling emotional pain, the
Mhm.
fear of getting stuck in it, of never feeling better or coming out of it. And it can just take one time of moving through it to trust that you're not going to get stuck in that emotional pain.
Yeah. So it's
And
building that self trust with
yes,
ourselves. Yeah.
yes. And it can be really helpful to have it planned. So, to plan what your gratitude practice is going to be. Are you going to write a gratitude letter after it? Are you going to think about one or two things that you're grateful for? Is that going to be the time you do team gratitude? So,
Mm,
it can be helpful to have it planned afterward. That can also provide a sense of emotional security so that you already have it planned.
right.
And this exercise is probably the hardest, and it takes time to develop. In the beginning it might take a little bit more time, but after you've done it for a while, it really can take about a minute to think about what that silver lining is, the lesson or underlying positive value. And
Beautiful.
then exercise number 5 is how you end the day. When you're in bed and your head hits the pillow, it's simply to reflect upon your day and think about one or two things that happened that day that went well or that you're grateful for. And this is powerful because we tend to bring in our sleep what we last thought about, focused on, read, and it affects quality of sleep. It can go both ways. So and often what happens is when everything quiets down and we're just left with our own thoughts at the end of the day, often that's when those negative thoughts can pop in, those racing thoughts, and they can just very quickly spiral and not only feel crummy, but then prevent what you need to do, which is sleep. So, gratitude is a great way to get a release of serotonin in your brain, which relaxes the nervous system,
Mm,
and it just fosters positivity, resulting in a more peaceful sleep. And once again, I love the science behind this and the research. One study looked at 400 adults, and they found that when they did a simple gratitude practice at bedtime, they improved the quality and duration of their sleep. And one amazing part about this study was that 40% of the adults in the study were diagnosed with a sleep disorder.
wow.
So they had a clinically diagnosed sleep disorder, did a simple gratitude practice, and reported significantly improved quality and duration of sleep. So it's a really simple, powerful exercise that also works at 3 o'clock in the morning when you are awakened with worry thoughts, or if you have a health issue, or if your
Mm.
to-do list feels too long and you're overwhelmed. It can be a great way to get back to sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Beautiful. I love these exercises, and I am doing 1 and 5 every day. The others, the intention, I it's not necessarily about gratitude, it's usually more about the day's energy, but I love specifically also focusing on the gratitude piece. That expressing appreciation for one person a day is a wonderful habit to develop, and it not only feels good, the science of gratitude also, in the receipt of that, in that expression, that is also very powerful. And so two people are being affected, and that's really wonderful, right? To know that you had that impact on not only somebody else but yourself. And then, yeah, number 4, I have to admit that that's been a hard one for me to learn because I was a talking, walking head. There was not a lot of feeling going on. I was very detached. That was the way I felt safe for a long time, was to escape into um, you know philosophical discussion or intellectualization or work. I used to work as a way to escape from my previous relationship and hide from the things I didn't want to see, and even sometimes now fall into those patterns. So I like that, just remembering that this can be the opportunity to find a blessing and not just swing right there and bypass the feeling, but really going through that entire process. That's beautiful. And I do have to say, my sleep has been the best it has in years since I started doing gratitude at night. I have this, like, yes, I'm going to get a little woo here for a second, guys. A rock, a beautiful crystal next to my bed, and I pick that thing up and I hold it and I close my eyes and what is the one thing I'm most grateful for today? And every time I have more than one thing to think about. It's hard to pick just the one thing, but by doing that, even on the crappiest of days, I still can find something. And yeah, my sleep, I used to have to take melatonin, all sorts of sleep aid, even prescription sleep aids. And now I don't need any of that stuff. It's great. Sleep is
Right.
wonderful.
Yes, we need sleep. It's so connected to everything, to our mood, attention span. So anything that we can
Yeah,
do to help improve the quality of sleep is great. And I love that this is free and it's
yeah,
accessible.
absolutely.
And you don't need anything but your brain to think about what you're grateful for. It's so
Well,
incredibly simple.
And that's why they say don't go to bed angry, right? Because when we're going to bed fuming about something or thinking about work, that's what's getting stored and processed into our system, our operating system, if you will. And so this is helping to switch that and make sure that we're programming, if you like, the
Yes.
intentionality of gratitude and the things we do want in our lives.
Yes, and simply our body softens when we think about what we're grateful for. So
Yeah,
if you imagine being angry, the muscles are tense, and
right.
it's even if you're able to fall asleep, you still might be holding that tension within you.
Absolutely.
And
Like with a stiff neck and
yes,
tight
yes.
jaw, all those things.
hmm So sometimes, if you're feeling tense, you can pair it with intentionally relaxing your body and going through, the body scan, starting with your
Mm.
head, going down to your toes, and relaxing the body if you're still feeling some tension while you're doing your gratitude practice.
Yeah, body scans have been very powerful for me as well. Um, I actually don't know if I've ever gotten below the heart because maybe I'm moving really slowly, but I'm really being intentional about the feeling, and then I fall asleep.
Sleep. hmm
So it's and I remember the first few times I did it, I was like, did I even get to my toes? And I don't think I've ever gotten there. So that's also a really wonderful thing. And for everyone who's scared about the big, scary F word, the feelings, this is something that if you for 4, 5, 6 decades haven't really practiced, that's okay. You don't have to jump in the deep end. It's just allowing yourself slowly, giving yourself permission, finding someone like Dr. Peggy to speak to and learn about how you can work through this in a way that works for you, right? So we'll share Dr. Peggy's link for her course as well at the end. Everyone can find that. So I'd love to ask you now, based on, I mean, you must have a lot of resources that through the science and the mindfulness and just who you are as a person. But when you want to apply that perspective, that lens on life, who would you say is on your personal board of directors?
Sure. I have probably top three top people, and that would be my mother and my husband. And I'm very fortunate to have a best friend of 52 years.
Wow,
Um,
amazing.
yes, we were next door neighbors from the age of 3 to 13. And then thankfully, we've remained very close throughout the decades. So those are my top three people who love me unconditionally, that I can accept their criticism without um, being defensive, because I know that they have my best interest in mind.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, may we all find friendships that can last that long and have someone to witness our evolution through the years and still love us for who we are. That's beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. Now, the next question I always love to ask all my guests is, what is your superpower?
My superpower is helping people feel, whether
Mm,
that be emotional pain or joy.
yeah,
Uh, and often people will come to me thinking they are in need of one thing, whether to feel better, and I very softly am able to have them experience more pain, which might not be what they wanted, but that over the course of time can realize that they can truly benefit from that first. And
yeah,
then the joy and other methods of positive psychology come after. So that truly is my superpower, that I help people feel. And the beauty in human emotion, the bittersweetness of all of our emotions. And I truly believe that there's no such thing as a negative emotion.
mm,
They're just emotions. And when we
yeah,
label them negative, it makes us not want to feel them. But we need to feel the fullness of all of our emotions. So part of that is being mindful of the labels that we put on feelings. Language is so powerful. And when we call them bad or negative, who wants that?
right.
So, so there's beauty in feeling sadness and grief and
Yes,
trusting that process, that it's connected to joy,
right.
and the truly the bittersweetness of life. That feeling fully
Yeah.
to me is living fully. So that's my superpower, helping people feel.
That is a beautiful superpower. And as you were speaking, what came to mind was nostalgia, right? And nostalgia is this beautiful expression of joy, but also a bit of melancholy for something that was, right? And yet we still appreciate it. And the fact is, right now, what we're living and experiencing will one day be something we're nostalgic for. And
Yes.
so that full breadth of feeling and allowing yourself, to get there is wonderful. And I love how you said you help people soften into what is and removing those labels. Because at the end of the day, everything serves a purpose. Everything has a way that it helps us, and it also has a limit, right? And so is once we acknowledge that, we can come back to a neutral space rather than this judgment of good or bad. I mean, I love to laugh, but I don't want to laugh 24/7. That'd be weird and it'd probably hurt and I wouldn't be able to do anything else, right? So
Right, right.
it's understanding that there's the yin and yang with everything.
Yes.
Beautiful. So the final question, which is often one that came about recently, but I love to ask because it really dives into the heart and soul of people, is how do you best serve or represent humanity?
I would say through simple kindness, whether that's in my private practice or my personal life. We often underestimate the power of simple acts of kindness.
Mm,
Whether that is complimenting a stranger. I make a point to have as much human connection during my day as possible. So I avoid self checkout lines. And instead, even if it's a little bit longer, I choose the lane with a real person
yeah,
and look to see if they have a name tag with their name and use their name. There truly is no such thing as small talk. When we call it small talk, it makes us not want to do it. We think it's
right.
insignificant, but it all matters. Every interaction that we have with other people matters. And the research shows that our connection and conversations with complete strangers contributes to our well being.
Mm,
And so I love that. So being kind in the simplest of ways is one way that I feel good about myself and having a positive impact on the world.
beautiful. I love that. And then what a beautiful reminder as well is just to be kind and remember that we all have the power to affect other people, including ourselves. And so bringing this beautiful practice of gratitude into our daily life is how we can really start with self and be that self-embodied leader and demonstrate to others, a new way of being that is more peaceful, more enjoyable, right? I mean, you and I were laughing before we got started of like it could have been this way the whole time, but a lot of that has to be through lived experience and trying it on for size. Life is just a big science experiment. So take some of these practices, see which ones work for you, which ones feel good to do, and then do them. And then if it doesn't work for you or you find a modification for it, wonderful, do that. That's how science works, right? We change our assumptions with new information and we test it out.
Yes, yes. I love that idea. We're just a big science experiment. It's true.
It is absolutely amazing. All right. Well, Peggy, where can people find you if they would like to connect after today's episode?
Sure. The best way would be through my website, and I have a free resource. It's called about these 5 exercises to help people put them into action. It's at my link, drpeggydelong.com/the grateful day. And if you sign up for that, you receive an email from me every day with one simple practice to put into action to help you with those 5 exercises.
Beautiful. All right. Well, we will definitely, that's there now in the comment section, no matter where you're watching this live or the recording from. And so if anyone has any questions, please reach out to us both, tag us in the comments. We'd be happy to get back to you. Peggy, thank you so much for being here with me today. This was a real pleasure, and I am very
Same
grateful
here.
for you.
So much fun. Thank you for having me, Sarah.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone for joining us live on today's episode of The Lounge. We'll be back on September 18th with Renee Bangelsdorf and the Aviation Collective. We'll see you soon.